Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. God bless you. My name is Pastor Yemi Omogboyega. Thanks you for patronizing my channel, and it's nice for us to talk on our just departed ex-president Muhammadu Buhari. Therefore, I titled this message as a man who lived a disciplined life but unable to fulfill this in the lives of Nigerians. A man himself lived a disciplined life but unable to pass the quality to Nigerians. Let me start by saying that I sympathize with the members of the families of late President, ex-President Muhammadu Buhari. I also sympathize with Nigeria for the loss of this gentleman, and I also commiserate with the world at large for losing yet another leader, because President Buhari is one of the leaders in the world. And however, let me also say that there is an adage in Yoruba language that says, Ọjọ́ tá bá kú là ń dèrè. Let me simply translate it as the moment we are dead, the dead person becomes a saint. A lot of comments have been going on concerning the lives and times of ex-President Muhammadu Buhari. And just as we are talking about him now, so our own days shall come. Yeah, it's a must. Shall come that people will pass comments on our deeds or misdeeds in this world. It's an unstoppable exercise. It's an exercise that whether we like it or not, whether we are believers or not, whether we are free thinkers or not, every one of us will pass through these comments. They are not judgmental, but whatever you do will be recorded for you, and people will say it, and might be your friends that will eulogize you, then your adversaries or your foes will also say their own. Then there are some people who are neither your friends nor your adversaries, but they are people who will say things as they see it, whether you are alive or dead. I know before President Muhammadu Buhari, late President Muhammadu Buhari, died, he actually received a lot of these comments, and he was able to know that, in fairness to him, that he did not accomplish his leadership goal for Nigeria. And the greatest goal that he set to achieve for Nigeria but was unable to accomplish, no matter how hard he tried, was the idea of instilling discipline in Nigerians. Instilling discipline in Nigerians. And that is to make Nigerians people of integrity. However, this vision of his for Nigeria, despite the fact that he was unable to achieve it for Nigerians, he was able to fulfill it in his own life, in his own personal life. That is why I was listening to Pastor Bakari's review of him. I've also listened to ex-President Obasanjo's comments on ex-President Muhammadu Buhari. Fair enough. Fair enough. And a lot of other people have been saying their own. Like I said, you either belong to the group of friends who will find no fault in President Muhammadu Buhari, or you belong to his adversary group, that there is nothing he did that you will attach value to. Or better still, you are just a realist. You say things as you are seeing them or you saw them. I would say that I belong to this realist group. Therefore, even when he was alive, whatever I'm saying now, I have said in many of my postings, and I just would kind of sum up exactly the President Muhammadu Buhari that I knew. And fortunately, I happened to live at least and see a lot about his leadership style, his visions, his missions, his goals, his strategies, and better still, I could assess or evaluate his achievements. Now, as I said, let's divide his life into personal and official. And when I say official, let me say at the leadership level, in the official capacity. Ex-President Muhammadu Buhari, there's no doubt, he was a disciplined man. He was a visionary man. He was, I know that some people will be offended now if I say he was a caring and loving guy. I'm not saying this in an hypocritical way. I meant it because he cared. And he is loving. He's a lover of Nigeria. Those of you in the opposite camp, you say, lover of Nigeria, I know what is in your mind. And I will talk about them as we go on. So, and it is also that we know. And if anybody has anything to the contrary, especially in the camp of the adversaries. They can be saying that now, but throughout his lifetime, nobody was able to say such things against him as not being honest as far as to the level that human beings can be. He distinguished himself. I know he had his own family challenges here and there. From what was alleged to have happened to his first wife, who wanted to, according to unconfirmed reports, unverified reports, who wanted to make peace between the ex-president and his one of his, in the military, you either have friends or foes. I remember what Baba Theophilus Danjuma once said when he was in the cabinet of ex-president Olusegun Obasanjo. He said, if you were in the army, you will know who are your friends and you will know who are your foes. So there is no, loyalty is the thing. So, Grapevine had it that, okay, he had challenges with his wife, who was trying to play the role of Abigail to bring peace between himself and someone he considered never to deal with in the leadership group, because, of course, they had encounters while in the military. Okay, so let me leave that at that. So you may say that even though I said he's loving and caring, you say he's unforgiving, because one would have expected that if Abigail wanted to play, Abigail played the role to make peace between King David and her husband, and her ex-husband now, who later became her ex-husband, that is in Nabal now. Nabal. Of course, the story was that King David needed help from Nabal, and Nabal, not only did he not offer the help, but he was arrogant. He degraded the status of, he defamed, let's put it that way, David. And David became angry, and David vowed that he would kind of revenge, and he was actually preparing for the vengeance when the wife got to know, and the wife mended the errors that the husband made. Exactly what David needed. Abigail went ahead and provided for David, and eventually the anger of David, who had not become a king then, was kind of assuaged or brought low, to the point that David forgave Nabal, even though, man can forgive, but God's vengeance is left for God to determine. And eventually, God himself dealt with Nabal. And of course, the reward for Abigail, this is where we are concerned with now. Take note of this. The reward for Abigail was that eventually uh, she became the wife of David after her husband Nabal had been killed, was dead. So, of course, David remembered her good deeds and took her for a wife. So, you can now see, you women in particular, let me inform you that every deed of yours has a reward attached to it. Maybe positive reward, maybe negative reward. So Abigail rescued the husband from the hands of David. But even though, like I said, God himself dealt with Nabal on his own terms. But King David, or David himself, he had not become king then. It was a period of challenges for David. And David decided to reward Abigail for good. But in the case of our ex-president, the reverse was the case, even though the effort was geared towards ensuring that there is a kind of forgiveness, there's a kind of reconciliation. How true that is, because we are far from these people, so we cannot verify. But be that as it may, that's part of the public perception of our dear fine soldier, fine ex-president, and President Muhammadu Buhari. That's in his own front that we, the lay people, know about it. You know that when you are a leader, you have no, even in our local lives, you see that we even still gossip about ourselves. But when you become a leader, the level of information that people pass around you, in fact, sometimes 90% of them may not be correct, but you are prone um, to public scrutiny. So there may be a lot of, even this story I'm talking about now may not be true. But whether it is true or not, he's a public officer, so he has no private life. That is one. So you may see him as unforgiving, but if you also look at his background, the military, you either have friends or foe. So you might not, and we might say that is the trademark for that profession. Unlike politicians who were quarreling, I remember our ex-president Obasanjo and ex-vice president Atiku. The noise was so much in the media that they were quarreling and they went to one of these their party meetings and so on. During that period, the two gentlemen went to the nearest restaurant and everybody was dining and whining. That is the nature of politics or politicians, which is the opposite of what it is in the military. So we can excuse that. It's an industry practice. Now again, ex-president Buhari, according to Pastor Bakari, and rightly so, could not be counted amongst those leaders in Nigeria who treasured wealth so much to the point that they made wealth their God, who had insatiable appetite for wealth gathering. Um, I know that, I'm not too sure now whether, but I think he did mention it sometime that he had no assets outside this country, Nigeria. He had no bank accounts overseas. Everything about him is here. And he did say that his wealth, I mean, in terms of cows and whatever, that there are so many that he has lost count, and that he has so much land that he has lost count, and that so he's wealthy, but he did not idolize wealth, unlike what we are seeing from our other leaders who would kill for money. So that is another plus for him. Godliness with contentment is great gain, and which means he's a man that was contented with whatever he had, and he did not look at other people's clock. And of course, amongst I remembered, it's a pity that he's dead now. I knew that even if he was not ill, I knew that ex-president Muhammadu Buhari would not have attended the book launch that's held, and where he was an invitee. He would not have attended that occasion because he would not have wanted to be amongst those that will be counted or mentioned or called a bundle of vultures, because he's a man that treasures his dignity. So that's a plus for him. So anything that is glaringly or disguisedly corruption, ex-president Muhammadu Buhari will not identify with such. And his life in his various official capacities, we knew that because he was not covetous, he was able to stand tall amongst others. So this is ex-president Muhammadu Buhari that we knew. Now, knowing him as an head of state, ex-president Buhari was the one that, first of all, I think it started with General Ramat Mohammed, what's his name now? Murtala Mohammed, yes, that was untimely gunned down. That actually opened Nigerians' eyes to what is called corruption, and did a lot of probes of his predecessors to establish the fact that there was corruption in Nigeria. And he was able to, himself and Obasanjo, ex-president Obasanjo, were able to make us to realize that even though we were enjoying, it doesn't seem that we had problems. It was the one that it was that regime that made us to understand that corruption was looming in the in their predecessors' administrations, which even I remembered when one of these regimes, corruption was so much, and General Gowon had to pass comment, which is true anyway, that in any administration, you cannot find a situation where that administration is corrupt free, but that we just have to manage it to the barest minimum so that the interest of the people will not be jeopardized. So that is one fact that that regime, the General Murtala Muhammad stroke Obasanjo regime, was able to bring out to justify their action for taking over. And when they came in, they did a lot to purge the society, and that is a plus to them today. So today, all of us, we know corruption, corruption, corruption. And we're able to even trace corruption back to our individual lives. I'm coming to that. So, ex-President Muhammadu Buhari's contribution towards that same goal was the war against indiscipline that he brought out. And everything, indiscipline itself is a corruption. And in fact, it was the regime of Buhari versus Idiagbon that was able to make us to really understand that it is not just the leadership alone that were corrupt. Every Nigerian was corrupt. Every Nigerian was corrupt. He brought it out in a larger form, because anything you call indiscipline is corruption. Okay, let's look at it this way. You may not have stolen money, but when you are damaging government public utilities, that's the problem. It's corruption. You may not have stolen money, but imagine, excuse me, how people became conscious of the fact that their environment must not be dirty during the regime of these same people. Buhari, Idiagbon, was when this was made known, And then apart from that, he also went ahead to carry out some exercises that threw fear into every officer in the office then, retiring some people, especially some palm secs and all that, or some public officers who were retired. I remembered it was during the regime of Buhari, Idiagbon, that somebody like, I don't even know his status now, Olawale Idris bagged life sentence for corruption when he was asked the source of his wealth. Whereas that regime also exonerated those who were honest, like Baba Jakande, as the governor of Lagos State then, was exonerated. Everybody around him, we found some corrupt, majority not corrupt, but those who were actually corrupt were exposed. And it sent the signals to everybody that wherever you are, and it also sent the signal that one lesson that I learned from that regime was the fact that now which I apply to my life is that number one, whatever wealth I would have that I would not be able to account for, that cannot be verified, that the source cannot be verified, and that the source would be corruptly, can I say, the kind of wealth that I would acquire in a corrupt manner that I would not be able to explain, no matter how opportunistic it might be, no matter how compelling or tempting or whatever they may be. Since then, I knew that when I held an office, initially I was just living my own life, living a life that was, to me, transparent because I had been guided from when I was young about this thing called integrity, about love, because if I love anybody, my nation, my family, my whatever, I will not betray them. And again, things like, being contented, godliness with contentment is great gain. That whatever I had, I must be contented with it. It's not as if I won't aspire to go higher, but I will not corruptly enrich myself to go higher. So that helped me. By the time the Buhari whatever came, it was then that again, that was again practically reinforced in my life. And from then I said, whether I held an office or in my own home or everywhere, I must try to keep proper records of whatever I'm doing, because that's the best way. In fact, if you want to catch somebody who has acquired wealth corruptly, it's easy, especially in these days of technology. After all, whatever transactions you have in life, majorly, are supposed to pass through your accounts. And even if you corruptly enrich yourself and you don't want to pass it through account, you're using proxies, of course, you stand a lot of risks. And again, you may be called to question one day to come and explain your wealth. And in the process of examining you, if you got to a point where you cannot justify your wealth, the sources of your wealth, every other thing will be corruption. And then you can easily be apprehended, or you can be indicted for amassing wealth in a corrupt manner. So you can now see that from then, even every office I held in my life, I keep duplicate records of whatever transaction, essential transactions that I know that can be called to question later. I keep private records of such till my retirement day. I keep records of things that I know could implicate me. That's one lesson that I learned from the Bible and learned from this man. Because without proper record keeping, the way the world is, you can be roped into many things. But when you have your records, like the late sage Baba Ola will say, records don't lie. Although I always say that it is records that are not corruptly crafted together, because records can lie sometimes. if you did something for 1 naira and the cost itself is just 1 kobo, and you put the 1 naira there, that's a corrupt figure. So there is no theory in this world that does not have the other side of it that cannot be disproved. So, but whatever it is, due process, which was the slogan in the administration of ex-president Obasanjo, which is a plus for him too, must be followed. So because of that, I have been careful all my life. So I learned that from this gentleman. Now, a lot of things like that, although some people hated him for that, people have called him, is he a saint? Will he say he's not, this is not that? But you cannot prove it that this man was not an honest man. And second thing you will say about him is that the kind of life he lived, he wanted Nigerians to live. But unfortunately for him, he tried but could not achieve it. During the period of Obasanjo, Idi Agbon, Muritala Idi Agbon, because of the push, just as Obasanjo was the push behind whatever General General Murtala Mohammed was able to accomplish. Everybody knew that it was the push that ex-president Obasanjo gave to that administration that made it work. He was practically the one doing it, even though it's a policy he was at the policy execution stage, and he carried it out to the letter, just like Tunde Idiagbon did during Buhari's Idiagbon's regime. Yeah. So there is no doubt that this man meant well, and he was able to push hard because of the Tunde Idiagbon, or the deputy that was powering him, because we did not really know who Buhari was until Tunde Idiagbon's administration came to an end. And to demonstrate who they were, when they were overthrown, Tunde Idiagbon came to this nation. He was outside the country. He came boldly back to this nation, and nobody was able to find him guilty of anything. And even the people that took over from Babangida, also that took over from Murtala, from Buhari, till today could not indict him for any form of corruption. So the man lived the kind of life that he was preaching to Nigerians. So that was the stage one. But by the time ex-President Buhari became the president of Nigeria, in fact, it was the only thing I was afraid of then, was that, afraid not for me but for Nigerians, was that, hey, this man would be as tough as he was during his previous administration, but this time in khaki, in agbada. In fact, if there's anything that the presidency of Buhari brought out of him, was the fact that this man was not actually, it was his vision, it was his mission, but he was not strong enough to push her to really fight corruption to a standstill. And the expectation of everybody was that with Buhari there, he will instill discipline in the lives of Nigerians. But alas, he was able to live a disciplined life in his own life and a personal life. But when it became the period of politics, it was then we knew how weak he was. One, we were expecting that being a military man, Boko Haram, whatever, will be a thing of the past. Two, being a military man, we're expecting that it will be, and being a Fulani man in particular, and a military person, he will also be able to curb the various insecurities that emerged in Nigeria, like kidnapping, um, like banditry, like these herders, farmers, wahala, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, also, he failed woefully here. And there were loud cries as to the fact that this man was not even able to control people under him particularly, because there were rumors, allegations of corruption even during his administration, which was least expected could happen, but it happened. So this actually brings to fore many of these our social critics. If you bring them to leadership position to come and implement what they are saying, it is there you will see their strength or weakness. It is one thing to know what is right and want to do what is right, but by the time you get to the hem of affairs and you find that you can easily be swept away by the wave of corruptions, such that you get perplexed, you get confused. You discover that, you may be a weak person. Now, especially when you don't have a good push. We are no longer in the military era, so everything has got to pass through democratic process. Buhari was able to achieve what he achieved during the military era because it was a military era. The awards were final. You don't subject yourself to any debate. But when it got into the hands of politicians, he was helpless. And this disappointed every one of us in Nigeria. And he himself knew. So that's why I'm not surprised. The message that the wife was reported to have, the message that was reported by the wife, or alleged by his wife to have been left behind, ex-President Buhari knew that he failed woefully as a civilian president, and he was not able to push hard those ideals which he envisaged for the nation and which he was able to implement in his own life successfully. And by the time he got to a larger circle, he knew that khaki no be leather, and that, man may propose, it's only God that can dispose, especially in Nigerian environment, where the best language we understand is corruption everywhere. Excuse me. We live corruption, we eat corruption, we swim in corruption, we breathe corruption, we watch corruption, we hear corruption, we talk corruption, everything about us It's an irony of life that Nigeria, being the most religious country, or if not one of the most religious country, that we live contrary to what our religions preached. Our three main religions, the traditional religion, that is the Isheshe, that you will carry Ogun, the cutlass, to swear. You will be afraid to do it. Whereas now you carry the Bible, you swear by it, or you carry the Quran, you swear by it, but you know that there will be no consequence per se, or even if there is at all, it will be a long time before it comes. It's not as if God is weak, that God gave everything to us and gave us the directions on how to, if as a pastor, for instance, what is greater than 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 16 that says that the Bible is given to us to teach us, to teach us so much about God, to guide our daily living, to correct us when we are going wrong, not in the Emefele's type. When the Bible is now being carried, when all the atrocities have been committed. And, okay, let's leave that. I'm just giving the example. Now, to reprove and to correct us in all situations. Everything, the Bible is to allow us to live a righteous life. But we hear all these things, but in practice, what became of them when, as a man, married man or single, I see another woman, another man's wife, apart from having ravenously dealt with her immorally in my heart, which Christ even said, when you think of it in your heart. So every Nigerian male is a sexual pervert from our hearts. And not only that, myself not excluded. That's why you may say that you didn't do it physically, but just like ex-President Jimmy Carter would say, how many times have I looked at woman lustfully, even though I have my wife in the house? Thank God for mercies. How much more? How many of us have not tasted the forbidden fruit? Either in our hearts or in the physical. So that's why I say we live, breathe, and do everything in corruption. How many of us can be entrusted with finances? How many of us can be entrusted with, oh, my friend kept something with me and let me be honest with it. That's why I said, Olegba. If you want to be dubious, you will use proxies. The proxies themselves are thieves. And the only thing is that you cannot complain when they defraud you. But surely, you are bound to be defrauded. That's the truth. Unless they are not Nigerians. So, you see, and up to today, Nigeria has not changed. Nigeria has not changed. Is it the Church of God you go to where judgment will be given that a financial member of a church, corruptly enriched himself and has paid tithes and paid heavy offerings or has made heavy donations that could be proved empirically? And the church will say, that money belongs to God, so it cannot be returned. Or is it the cover up that our GOs are doing when their members are caught in the web of corruption, and all they will do is to use their powers to ensure that justice is not attained for the people? Or is it the corruption of mixing the Old Testament with the New Testament in order to get tithes, in particular of first fruits? Till today, are our teachers, GOs, not still preaching tithing and first fruits in their churches? Is it that they are unaware of Hebrews 7 that makes the distinction between the Old and the New Testament? Verse 22 in particular, that said all those old orders have been set aside because they refuse to attain the justice that God intended. So corruption everywhere. Or is it in the mosques? Or is it in transacting business with fellow Christians or fellow brothers in Muslim world? I took my cutlass to one guy who happened to be a Muslim, and one way or the other, the cutlass had been collected by somebody else for us, which I didn't know. I came to ask the gentleman for the cutlass, and he said he looked around, he couldn't find it. He said I should go home and ask that. During his inquiries, he found that somebody came to collect. I said, okay. I went to, but and then I reported back to him later that I found. He said, look, if there is anything, because of the day of resurrection, he will not want to offend anybody. That was why I was so concerned that we must find it. Look at this man. Everything he does, he remembers that there is a day, there is a jannah, there is a day of resurrection. If all of us are like this, like Joseph would say, God forbid that I do this against my God. If everybody were to be like this, and if everybody were to be able to live the personal life, that lifestyle that Buhari lived, to the point that nobody could pin him down to say he's a thief or he's corrupt. But unfortunately for him, he was unable to rid Nigeria of corruption. That vision of his was bigger than him, that he envisaged, just like ex-President Obasanjo would say, I never knew that the situation was this bad. With the promises I made, thinking that I would be able to solve the problems. Until today, the problems are still there. Because of what? Corruption. Now, we just had the report of NNPC and all that. We're now torn between selling it, privatizing it, or what was the third option? You know? And what is the source? Look, since President Tinubu got there, we remember, if there's one major contention that Buhari contended with ex-President Obasanjo, was the issue of that, of power supply, where he was asking, where was the bulk of money that was sunk into generating power to households in Nigeria? Is it 16 billion, they said? Then how much, for goodness sake, have been sunk into trying to upgrade or repair the 3 refineries that we have in Nigeria? What's the outcome? Now we're in the dilemma whether to sell or dispose or whatever. And when we even want to dispose it of, what will happen? It is the same people that ruined it that will buy it. And of course, the objective will be clear to make sure that it is in perpetual state of not being operative. So that they can be exporting crude and then refining them overseas in their own factories and bringing them back to this place at exorbitant prices. What is it that is making our road construction? I was listening to Dr. Lawal's comments on the late Kabiyesi of Sikiru Awujale that just left, that these people, what can we say that, what tangible things, progressive things can we say these Obas did for the people? But that they are the owners of the contracts, awarded to them to construct roads, which the roads were either not completed or badly constructed. Yet the money is paid fully for the quality of a good work. So this is who we are. To me, like I said, ex-President Buhari taught me a lesson from his first regime, that I must keep proper records so that if anything is happening, I will be able to explain myself and be able to prove that this is what happened. It helped me. I don't know what you learned from him. If there is anything, when matters like this happen, we use it to mirror our lives. What would people say about us when we left? Today, nobody is saying that he's a thief, but he was unable to cure that problem in Nigeria. In insecurity, he was unable as a military man to conquer the insurgencies and the kidnappers and the bandits of this world. He was even unable to tame his own people, maybe out of affection, maybe out of whatever. The overall interest of Nigeria was sacrificed for the interest of these few. Good for nothing set of groups. Then, in the life of ex-President Buhari, I'm able to see that there is a difference between one's personal life to be able to personal ability to discipline himself, and trying to instill discipline in other people. Without the cooperation of the people, you can't get it. He failed. It's unfortunate. Even personally, as a person, from my early days, God has made me such a person that I try to see what can be done to make the present better. Any situation I find myself, I want to see how to improve it. But I found that I was able to do it in my own life. But when it gets to others, I discovered that Because no matter how much you preach, no matter what you do, no matter the measures you put in place, people will still do what they want to do because they are already, it is inbuilt in them. The only thing you'll be struggling to do is to now ensure that you exonerate yourself. You make sure that you don't join them. That's all. So let whosoever practices evil carry their evil and face the repercussion of their evil. I have, in even at the family level, at the which is the root of it, at the family level, there are some things you want to correct, you want to say this is not right, let us do it in a godly way. But when the people insist that, the next thing is in fact, you find that you yourself will be challenged and you'll be seen as enemy of the family. In fact, by the time they interpret it for you, you will be shocked. Then compare to your vision of justice, fairness, and equity for everybody. In the family, when you get to the office, a different ball game altogether. When this happens, what do you do? And the higher you go, was like during the period of ex-President Shagari, everything, corruption was at its peak. But the man, you cannot pin him down to say he did this. But he allowed them to have a field day. Maybe he would not have even lasted his first regime if... I remember there is one reputable body, the executive, the regime. Let me not mention the name of the regime of the body. It's a professional body in Nigeria. That the tenor of a particular regime was, in fact, they exposed themselves in the social media that the leadership was saying, let us be prudent, now we spend money. But the followership are saying, where we work is where we work is where we chop. This caused a lot of serious tensions, such that even that regime did not survive. I mean, just managed to complete one tenure. They were never voted in for the second tenure. And this is a body that is supposed to know best what justice is and what integrity is, what transparency is. I mean, outside that profession is, it's religion that could also teach what this profession stands for. So, in summary, use the life of ex-President Buhari, of course Murtala Mohammed too. Use their lives to mirror your own life, the way you are living, because one day, whether you like it or not, if they don't say it in your present where you are alive, a day like this will come. People will say it. But above all, let us always remember, hey, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, what did they say? King, if our God that we serve is unreal, and that what we profess is not real, and this our God cannot save us, then it is better we perish. But we will not do your wish. Whether we like it or not, two things. whether you believe in it or not, as a religious-minded somebody, and you believe that God reigns, and they tell you that your religion tells you that there is either Al-Jannah or heaven, hell, or hellfire. If you say you profess to be a Christian and you believe in this because it's about by faith, if you don't believe, you can die and waste away. It doesn't matter, because you won't mind wherever your soul went. But if you believe, why don't you operate in the fear of that God that you profess to serve, and at least come out to become a man or a woman of integrity, or using the Buhari's approach, be a disciplined person in all that you do. Now, 2, assuming that you don't even believe in all this, what does it cost you to live right? A life of live and let live. Why do you think that everything must be for you and for you alone? Survival of the fittest, and you will kill, you will maim, you would destroy to ensure that others do not profit from whatever you are in charge of. Think deeply. One thing is this: I don't need to say that God is greater than all of us, and He has limited our stay here. But what we'll do will remain in our own records. And remember also, if I can use my phone to record this message, my voice, my face, everything you see, the environment in which I was doing the recording, you could see. Would you believe that the record of all that you do will not be replayed one day? Not even necessarily for punishment purposes. Do you think that we'll just go and die and that's all? There is something outside this flesh, our soul, our spirit. They will hover around. You remember in your biology, you said when a man dies, the spirit comes out. Is it the soul or the spirit now comes out and is suspended in space, waiting for the day of judgment? If you're a believer, it doesn't matter whether you believe or not. The day of judgment, when it comes, it has come. Ex-President Ex-President Buhari has gone. His deeds, misdeeds, his errors, commissions, omissions follow him. We are commenting on him today. Your own day is coming. God bless you. Please share these messages across. Maybe somebody somewhere will reflect and use this man's life to mirror his life and change for the better. And by extension, our society changes for the better. God bless you. I'm your friend, Pastor Yemi Omoboyega. Let me round up by one message, by a song. Remember, àṣegbé mọ̀dẹ̀ sí láyé o, àwẹ̀ o ìgbẹ̀yìn ní kòrò, ìgbẹ̀yìn Buhari ti dé, ìgbẹ̀yìn tìyín náà dé, tèmi náà dé. There is nothing you do that is not recorded. The recording will be played for you later, whether you believe it or not. Therefore, please, I plead with you again. Be transparent. Have a wonderful day.